which our sports leagues have turned into virtue signaling apparatuses for the purpose of pushing left-wing politics. Joining us on the line to discuss the hypocrisy inherent in this sort of nonsense is Clay Travis, the sports journalist, writer, television analyst, and founder of Outkick. He, of course, is the host of a morning radio show for Fox Sports Radio, as well as a bevy of podcasts. Clay, great to talk to you.
Hey, Ben. Appreciate you having me, man.
All right, so let's talk about this story that you're breaking over at Outkick, in which you essentially allege, with evidence, that a bunch of NBA players, many of whom have spoken out about the evils of American racism, are basically accepting cash from companies that are overtly using Muslim slave labor to produce cotton.
It's an unbelievable, ridiculous, absurd story that could only somehow expose the NBA and China hypocrisy even more. So here's the story for people who don't know it, Ben. There is cotton being produced from the Xinjiang region in China by the Muslim Uyghurs that is considered to be slave-produced cotton. And Nike, to their credit, said, oh, by the way, maybe we can produce our products without using slave labor cotton, considering, it's 2021 now. When they said that, Chinese people lost their minds because, of course, they're using it as a nationalistic argument against China in terms of the way that they distribute that story and that decision by Nike. And so two different Chinese sneaker companies made the decision, Li Ning, I believe, and Anta is how you pronounce both of those companies, that not only are they going to refuse to abandon Chinese slave labor cotton, they're actually going to double down on the fact that they are using it. They explicitly now said, as part of Chinese nationalism, we are committed to using slave labor cotton. Why is that significant? Well, many of the top stars in the NBA have contracts with one or the other of these Chinese sneaker companies. Guys like Klay Thompson, who's currently out injured, Dwayne Wade, who is retired but still an influential force, and then D'Angelo Russell, Jimmy Butler. You name all these different guys. You can read about it at Outkick.com. They are explicitly performing in NBA games with slave labor produced product via the genocidal actions of China. And when you ask the NBA players or Commissioner Adam Silver or anyone else affiliated with the NBA, whether that's appropriate given the NBA's social justice warrior stance, they refuse to comment.
Well, that's not a shock at all, given the fact that LeBron James for years has been a Chinese apologist. And he obviously is very upset that anybody had anything to say about Chinese takeover of Hong Kong, the first subjection of a free country to complete tyranny since World War II. LeBron had no statements on that, but he does have statements every other day about how living as a black man in America means that you're an existential threat thanks to American white supremacy. He says all that while being worth apparently about $1 billion. So existential threat has not yet met LeBron James.
Also, LeBron is unwilling to say anything at all about China, both because of his relationship with Nike and other companies that are multinationals. But I think more importantly now, so Space Jam 2 gets on in Chinese theaters, right? Because if LeBron ever spoke out and said something simple like, I'm in favor of human rights around the world, China would pull his movie as well as his products, as well as his ability to make money off of Chinese corporations. And that's why LeBron claims famously that he won't just shut up and dribble, but in fact he will shut up and dribble for Chairman Xi and the communist dictators of China.
We'll get to more with Clay Travis in just 1 second. First, Raycon is disrupting the electronics industry by designing a premium wireless audio for half the price without compromise. They're doing things differently than the other brands out there. You go. We also have an YT. also haven't talked since the MLB decided to pull the All-Star game from Georgia. This is actually not the first time that the MLB has done something like this. A few years ago, they did the same thing with Jan Brewer in Arizona after there was a big hubbub about how Jan Brewer was enforcing immigration law in the state of Arizona. Now they've done it again with regard to Georgia. They've moved the All-Star game from a city that is, or an area that is majority black, to an area that has about 7 black people in it, apparently to help black people. So that's very exciting news. It's pretty incredible how the sports leagues seem to be enthralled to extraordinary minorities of the base. I'm not talking in terms of race. I'm talking in terms of viewpoints and the corporate media, which are pushing this sort of stuff.
Yeah, but you know this because who knows? This may trend because people get upset and they decide to run their algorithms in big tech, and next thing you know, we're trending. You last about 24 hours with this media mob that comes after you when they're demanding an action. And if you don't do anything, they lose interest and they move on to the next target. And this is what I said on my show. I said, look, if Rob Manfred had come out and said, hey, we're honoring Hank Aaron, who's one of the greatest black achievers in the history of Major League Baseball in Atlanta for this particular All-Star game, given the fact that he just died recently. We are also going to be playing our All-Star game, and as you mentioned, a majority black city of Atlanta. There are many different small businesses, many of them owned by black people, that will benefit from the $100 million plus impact that bringing our All-Star game will have in this jurisdiction. So, if you believe that the voting rights bill is so draconian in your mind that you don't want to play or manage or even attend the All-Star game, that's your right. We believe we are creating more good in Atlanta than we are bad, and we will maintain our All-Star game there with the idea that if you are a player or coach who doesn't want to participate because of your political beliefs, we 100% respect that, and you don't have to be here to participate in the game. I don't understand how anybody would have complained about that at all, and I also don't believe it would have been a story for more than a day longer. And then look at all the criticism that the Masters got. As soon as they teed off on Thursday morning, it all evaporated instantaneously. Even Joe Biden wasn't willing to stay committed to his All-Star game perspective. He basically walked it back as soon as Major League Baseball did it. And this could be a big deal in 2022 because even the Democratic politicians in Georgia know that more popular than the Republicans or the Democrats is the Braves in that state. They didn't want to be seen as responsible for pulling away this game. So it is a failure of epic magnitude, I believe, by Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball. Baseball management and leadership to have made this decision.
I mean, is there a point you think, Clay, where these sports leagues actually just begin to shut the hell up? Because they really should. I mean, just as corporations should, like, if you just don't give a response to the bang mob, as you mentioned, then they just go away. And yet the sports leagues feel the necessity to start immediately complying with every demand foisted upon them by the most vocal people in politics, namely radicals with nothing to do for the day on Twitter. Do they just not get it? Is there a certain point where they learn? Like, what is the actual outcome here?
Yeah, first of all, they should do less, and that's what I've been arguing for a long time. Do less, and you know this, and I think people in media maybe experience it less than people like you or I do, but when someone decides to come after you, there is a frenzy of activity, and it's on your phone, right? And I think many of these different leagues employ a lot of people in PR, and the lessons of PR don't necessarily apply the same way in social media as they might have historically. And so my lesson in PR would be, hey, wait 24 hours. See if this is still a story. If so, we need to address it potentially. But almost everything, as you know, Ben, is gone within 24, 36, 48 hours. And so if you do less, you alienate far fewer people. There's a morning consult poll out this morning. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it says the approval rating of Major League Baseball among Republican voters, I think I'm getting it right, I don't have it right in front of me, went from 45 on the scale to a 12 in the wake of this decision by Rob Manfred. And what a lot of people miss is you don't gain fans when you sort of genuflect at the altar of the woke sports disagree with and you're already a fan, you'll watch it less. And I think that's what the calculus gets lost here. You don't gain anyone and you'll lose a lot of people